Hello everyone, it's Attacker70T here, and for today, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I'm back at again talking about this game, but if you remember about a couple weeks ago, I actually made an early review talking about the game. However, at the time, I was only a few hours into the story, so I really didn't give that much detail into the gameplay and into much of the characters or story whatsoever, but as time goes on, and I fully completed the Pokédex, I finished every character's major arc, did every side quest for the staff members, and it completed all 4 story modes at once. So overall, I think it's best to say that I'm going to be doing a full-on review talking about Scarlet and Violet once and for all. Keep in mind before I start, these are obviously my thoughts and opinions about each of what I feel about these types of, mechanics or mechanisms or character arcs. That's just something I want to mention. Second off is that I will not be talking about specific characters such as the gym leaders or the Elite Four, as I've already mentioned those characters in my gym leaders video. I still will be talking about another certain character in this video, and not only that, there will be some major spoilers. Yes, I know it's been like a couple months at this point, but given that some fans or players never played Pokemon Scarlet and Violet just yet, I think it's best to say that there will be a lot of major spoilers if I continue on. So I hope you at least enjoy this video, and so with that, let's get started reviewing Scarlet and Violet once and for all. So first off, the review will be split into 3 parts, one being the gameplay, the second being the characters, and the third being the big main stories itself. So first off, the gameplay itself. How does it change? Is it basically the same thing as the past Pokemon generation games? Well, first off, you can still do the same thing as in past generations, such as catching Pokemon and completing the Pokédex and all, and especially trading and battling online. Yeah, the same old thing. However, some changes were added into the game that felt oddly refreshing. First off is the fact that while Pokemon Legends Arceus did manage to do this in an open world landscape, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet actually made this game fully open world, making sure you can explore the entire area at once, so you can basically catch any sort of Pokemon to your choosing and go through any story that you like. So it's basically your typical, so it's not really your typical, get a Pokemon, face your rival, and then go to Victory Road. Instead, it is basically your own choice. Another thing to mention is the legendary Pokemon now acting as sort of a main mechanic to the game, which I will be talking about later on into the video. Another thing to mention is that not only can you battle the typical Pokemon where you do turn-based battle systems, instead you can also, get out your Pokemon and do some sort of a thing known as a raid battle. A raid battle simply is just summoning your Pokemon, and then after that, basically, you get some of their items from said Pokemon opponents. So yeah, I actually like that sort of gameplay change. And not only that, the other thing is that you can also go to school as well and basically do a lot of classes. Yeah, if you're like a newcomer to this game or into the franchise, or like veteran Pokemon players like myself, most of us would just skip over the classes until we come back or complete the main story and do it post game and all. I had to do some classes in between playing the game and all. However, they do give out some pretty nifty awards if you ever wanted to try it out. Plus, you can also get a lot of character development for a lot of the staff members, including the main ones. But overall, there are some issues I have to mention in terms of not just the gameplay, but the performance. The game, don't get me wrong, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is one of the best ever games so I've played in a while in terms of Pokemon as a series itself. But I really feel like the performance when we first saw it was truly horrendous. At first, I didn't face those issues, but after about 10 out to 15 hours into the game, I've suddenly decided to face off many different glitches, sometimes bug, and there was a time where the game straight up kicked me out because there was an error that occurred during the game. Thank goodness I had autosaves on, or else I'd be so angry that I lost most of my progress. But yeah, even though the game's performance isn't really well, the gameplay itself really changed greatly, despite its frame rate issues. So yeah, gameplay overall is about an 8.5 out of 10. If only the performance wasn't bad, I would have given it almost a 10, maybe a 9.6 out of 10. Alrighty, with the gameplay out of the way, we now get to talk about the main characters. Now, keep in mind, like I mentioned, I will not be talking about any of the gym leaders, so if you if you're wondering what my opinions are on them, then you can watch it in one of my videos talking about them instead. But for now, I will be talking about some of the big core characters in this game, along with some of the main staff members that you find in Mesagoza, as there are a few character developments and arcs for a couple of them, and especially giving you some nifty rewards and side quests whenever you finish their classes. So first off is your new rival for this region, Nimona. Now, here's a story that whenever I first saw this character, at first when I saw Nimona, I felt like, okay, she felt pretty interesting, but as time goes on, I've been seeing some people saying that she's really battle crazy and eccentric, making me kind of worried that she's gonna be another underwhelming character like Hop from Sword and Shield or Howl from Sun and Moon, as some of their character arcs and development felt a little underwhelming. Don't get me wrong, Hop did get some development, but not as much to really kind of finish off his character arc. That kind of goes the same thing for Howl, as I've seen how very underwhelming his entire story was and his role in the entire game of Sun and Moon, and I think Ultra Sun and Moon as well. Nimona is a character that I thought was pretty worrying, and you know what? I started to just not like her because of how battle crazy she was, but after about a few days and, doing the post game and all, I kind of started to actually like her and feel a bit sympathetic to her more, because, in the post game, she stated that she was, like, the thing about her is that when she fought top champion Gita, she was basically a character that actually held back, but still managed to get a champion rank in the entire Paldea region, and it felt like she was, and, some were kind of scared about her becoming, one of, she was, they expect her to win and all, but in reality, she just kind of wants to have fun, and she really believed in us despite us meeting her, at the very beginning of the game and wanted to be friends already and rivals. So I misunderstood Nimona is what I'm trying to say. So I don't mind Nimona as time goes on, and I think I'm starting to like her character arc a bit more often. It'll take some time for me to get used to, but I'm starting to pretty much like Nimona as, the days go by. Next up is another one of the core characters in this game, being Arvin. Now, okay, don't lie to yourself. We all thought Arvin was gonna be some sort of bratty kid, because, he was holding he's holding a berry and all. We think he's pretty much a high-class character, but after playing the game and learning about this character, yeah, I must say that Arvin is by far one of the most tragic Pokemon characters in the game, and by far one of the most tragic ones in the series and, the Pokemon universe itself. I really just don't understand how we assumed that Arvin was going to be some sort of bratty kid. It became one of the most sympathetic and empathetic characters out there. And after playing his story mode, I really feel bad for what he's been going through. For a character that managed to cook by himself after his parents never really get to take care of him, and especially with his main Pokemon, Masbostif, I think that's how you pronounce the Pokemon's name, I can't remember. All I'm saying is that after finishing his character arc in the story mode, yeah, I can truly feel that he is a character that was really misunderstood. So, yeah, Arvin, one of my favorite characters in Scarlet and Violet by far. Next up is Penny, and I will say that at first Penny seemed, Penny felt at first kind of a character that made, all the geek, nerdy types and all, but as we go on, we then get the biggest revelation that, spoiler alert, she is actually the leader of this game's main villain for, this region, Team Star. First off, Team Star is pretty much a dumb name, and I don't like its grunts, but after learning a few of its characters and Team Star itself, and, Penny trying her best to try to not get her friends in trouble, I actually liked her a bit more. Plus, she has an Eevee backpack. Who doesn't want an Eevee backpack? I am very curious on the story and why she managed to make Team Star to begin with. I mean, I feel like there was a reason why she made Team Star. I probably just can't remember. But I am curious about her past, though, because she did mention in the game about her parents being loud and, and her dad being the worst. And from some theories I've heard, some stated that Penny's father may seem to be Chairman Rose, the main, I guess I can say, the big villain character in Sword and Shield. And I can totally see that, but maybe when there's going to be some DLC in the future, I think we can learn a bit more about Penny. And you know what, I can understand her trying her best not to get her friends in trouble and to be, the menace to the whole school. So, yeah, I actually like Penny a bit more. Next up is a character being the top champion of the Paldean region, who also leads the Pokemon League and also is the chairman of Mesagosa herself, Geeta. Now, I've already discussed about Geeta, but I did state it lots of times in there that I find Geeta really, really mysterious and strange, because first up, she doesn't really get that much of an impression. All she says is that we don't really know much about the character aside from the fact that she stated that she's a character that doesn't hold back in battles, and then okay, let's not also forget her team. Her team is by far one of the most underwhelming teams in terms of champion and all. And the fact that she called herself top champion, which that is the only title that is given to her out of the many characters in the Paldea region, is even weirder. And the fact that Glamora is a Pokemon that you cannot catch until you get to Area 0 is a bit more strange. I kind of hope whenever DLC comes out, we get to learn more of Geeta, because like I said, she's just a really weird character, to say the least. Next up is the director of Mesagosa itself, Clavel, who pretty much shows you the ropes of the academy and how it works to begin with, and is the one that basically does the annual treasure hunt that, occurs in the story. At first, when we thought he was gonna be, and don't lie to me, we all thought that Clavel was gonna be some big twist villain just because of how very strict he looks, but in reality, he's not. Now, I'm not gonna say what he does, but he does play a big role in this, and it is quite hilarious, but him with his situation with Team Star and becoming way more understanding of them is really genuine and really great. And I kind of wish schools does this to a lot of things whenever kids get bullied. I kind of wish this, come on, be more like Clavel. Be more like Clavel. I do really like some of his funny moments as well. And as the game stated, and from this, from the description, he does have a bit of a relationship with either Professor Turo or Professor Sada. Now, since I'm talking about Mesagosa after Clavel, I think it's best to even talk about some of the, staff members as well. I won't be talking about much of them, but I will go through them in like a brief sentence. So, let's just go through it. Our homeroom teacher, Jack, or is it Jacques? Really like the character. He's funny, loves his hairstyle, and I do really love his fate in us becoming a Pokemon trainer, and especially, completing the Pokedex and all. Dendra, one of my favorite characters, I'm there because, I like the fighting type characters, and I really wish she was a fighting type gym leader, because when I first saw her, I thought she was like the gym leader for a fighting type, when in reality she's just a teacher. So Guaro, pretty great character. Really love his, he's one of those characters that is pretty much intimidating from his big structure, but is pretty sweet. It is pretty sweet on the outside and on the inside as well. Rhyhorn, I'm not really a fan of Rhyhorn, but I do appreciate her kind of giving us fate in, with the whole ruinous Pokemon, which I will not talk about in the video. Salvatore, I do like how eccentric he is, but I do find him kind of okay. Miriam, when I saw Miriam, I'm like, is that Iono's mom? Because she looks pretty familiar in terms of the hairstyle and design, but I do appreciate her character development of becoming a nurse and now becoming a full-on teacher. Then there's also Mrs. Time, and we get to learn a bit more about her, as, spoiler alert, she's actually one of the sisters to the gym leader, the ghost-type gym leader, specifically being Rhyme, which I feel like it should be obvious since they look very similar to each other, so obviously they could be related. And I feel like I'm forgetting one more character from the staff, but if I'm missing anybody else, then let me know in the... I do have to mention Hassel, but then again, he is a gym teacher. He's already like one of the Elite Four, so I won't really be talking about him at all. So that's all I can say about the staff members for Mesagosa overall. And now, last but not least, the biggest character and the core one to the main story and the game itself is Professor Sada and Turo. This is the very first game to have two professors instead of just one, because, in the past games, we've gotten a few, version exclusives and, one professor, but never two professors at once. And, and throughout the game, they don't appear as much unless you're into the Path of Legends and all, and they do play a huge vital role, which I will be talking about in the story part. But Professor Sada and Turo are pretty interesting because of the designs themselves and, the personality. And also, another thing is that they are actually the parents to Turo. To Arvin. So, that is truly something to say, at least. Now we get to talk about the box legendary Pokemons, that being Koraidon and Miraidon. Now, when it comes to box legendary Pokemons, or just legendaries themselves, we don't really get to learn some of them as they either come out very late into the game, whether it's from the beginning of the game, or we just don't get to learn about them at all, somewhere between the midpoint of the game as well, but we don't really get to learn much about its lore unless you look it up online, or just, watch the Pokemon anime itself. Koraidon and Miraidon are basically with you from straight from the get-go, which I must say is one of the best decisions that Game Freak and Pokemon Company has ever made. Making your box legendary come with you and go on an adventure in the very beginning and the start is truly a good idea, and it kind of makes me, and it kind of feels like you went through a whole character development with Koraidon or Miraidon as you progress through the story, which kind of makes me feel happy to see more legendaries. I really hope more legendaries are like this in the future, maybe with the Kanto DLC, possibly, because I know there's going to be a lot of rumors about it. So yeah, Koraidon and Miraidon, best characters. I know they're stated to just be sandwich motorcycle bike lizards and all, but overall, Koraidon and Miraidon, by far one of my favorite box legendaries in the entirety of the Pokemon Generation games. Now we finally get to talk about the big part of the game, and that, my friend, is the story. The story mode, unlike any other, is actually split into 3, now actually 4 parts if you finish all the 3 stories. Instead of just going through the victory road as you usually do, seeing your rival, pick your Pokemon and all, instead you head to school like I mentioned earlier, and now you get to, do a thing known as the treasure hunt, which is basically all 3 story modes at once, where you can either go through victory road, go through, with the Path of Legends with Arven, or you can try and stop Team Star from, causing any more havoc and all. And I must say, each of these story modes give quite a character development for each of them, and gives out quite a good impression on each of them. And especially with the last story as well. Now, in terms of the lore-wise, and when it comes to the story itself, there are some ones that I'm very interested of as well. Like I mentioned before, Gita being a very mysterious and odd character because of her being the top champion and having Glamora and all. But another thing to mention is that depending if you have the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you can also have the Scarlet or Violet book, and it does give out some really intriguing details, such as this one, for example, as some of the words or sentences are not completed. They're just blurred out. Which makes me think, is there another legendary that they didn't find in the expedition? Because that I really wanted to see when it comes to the DLC. And also, I think many of us may have noticed, but there is like a strange sort of, how do I say it? There's like a really strange blue area on your map whenever you play the game, and some stated this could bleed into some Kanto DLC, which is more likely given from the latest leaks, and I think there was leaks, I can't remember. All I'm saying is that, yeah, with the DLC, I hope we can see what this mysterious Pokemon is in this book, because I don't really want to know what this actually looks like. Maybe it's stronger than Miraidon and Koraidon, who knows? And now we get to some of the big parts of this, being the treasure hunt and then the final story. First off is the typical victory road you see in every Pokemon game. Now, as you go through the victory road, it's basically your typical what you do. You go through 8 gyms, fight your rival at some times, and then at the very end, you fight the Elite Four and then the big champion. Pretty typical, I must say. But it does end off with Nemona having one big battle with you, and it does end off in a nice little note at the very end of it, which I do like. So yeah, nothing too special to say at least, but it does give out a few introductions, and it's still, the typical victory road we've known for many years. Next up is the Path of Legends arc, which features you and Arven going to find 5 Herba Mysticas in order to pretty much get, heal Arven's Pokemon Mass Boss Stiff, which I mentioned earlier, and like I mentioned, one of the saddest and most tragic characters in the series, and the fact that we get to learn that Arven is basically the son of Professor Sada or Turo makes it even sadder, because they have not seen their son in 10 years, which I really don't understand. Now, when I first did the Path of Legends one, I did have some struggles with a few Pokemon, but yeah, I mean, there's really nothing I can say aside from the amazing character development and that nice little twist at the end of its arc. Then there is the story between Team Star. Now, first off, the Team Star grunts, like I mentioned, is really bad in terms of just, in terms of designs, because they're just pretty boring. They mostly just have school outfits and then helmets, and that's about it. But I do like some of the main Team Star leaders, such as Mela, Giacomo, and then, Eri and all. Some of those characters I really do like, and we get to see some flashbacks, and we do get to fight them on the Rever Room, one of the new Pokemon that is really huge, depending if you have the right type of Pokemon in your team. And after learning a lot more in terms of Penny on the reason of why she, disbanded Team Star to begin with, is really heartwarming to say at least. And it kind of shows that Penny herself is truly caring to, her friends, and doesn't want, them to go cause any more trouble overall. They do also give out the team raid battles, which is now, been part of the game as well, so that is something I do like. And finally, the last one is called The Way Home, which is the very last story arc that you go through after completing the first 3. Now, what do I honestly think about this one? Quite a big one to end it off with, because usually when it comes to ending off a Pokemon game, most of the time you mostly, fight the big champion, and that's about it. But this one, it's a nice change of pace. We get to explore the great crater of Paldea, and get to learn the secrets of what was truly down there. And the biggest one, in my opinion, was the plot twist with the professors, because this is the first time in the Pokemon series that the professors themselves are actually dead. Like, they are straight up dead, which is why, Arvin doesn't get to see them as much anymore, and, learning about it is absolutely shocking. And, you know what, fighting the professor and, the beta or AI Koraidon and Miraidon, and the fact that you get to use Miraidon and Koraidon in the very end of it was truly satisfying, and a way to end off the story. So, yeah, that's all I can say about it. Sure, there is post-game, but there's nothing really else I can say about it, but I want to know all your thoughts and opinions down below about this. What do you all think of my review, my full-on review on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down below about this. And so with that, leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more videos, follow my Twitter, and I'll see you guys next time. And remember this, once a legend, always a legend. Like a Hellcat.